What if the way you teach and care for young children could change the world? Welcome to Reimagine Childhood, brought to you by the Early Childhood Christian Network, helping you grow as an educator, leader, and follower of Jesus. Early childhood is a sacred season where hearts are shaped, faith begins to grow, and lifelong learning takes root. We believe teaching young children is more than a job, it's a calling. That's why each episode is filled with practical strategies, real stories, and faith-based encouragement to help you create joyful, meaningful learning experiences in your classroom and beyond. Let's reimagine what's possible in early childhood together. I'm your host, Monica Healer, and I'm so glad you're here. Today's guest is Dr. Robin Pearson. Robin is passionate about helping children and families thrive. She's a certified special education teacher with more than a decade in the classroom, and she's also served as an executive director, a pediatric clinic intake director, and national instructor for USA Gymnastics. Robin holds a doctorate in educational leadership from Creighton University and has trained at USC's Children's Hospital in leadership for neurodevelopmental and related disabilities. She is well qualified for what we're talking about today. From coaching gymnastics to leading programs for children with special needs, Robin brings a wealth of experience and a heart for making a difference. I know that you are going to hear her heart today for helping children who struggle in our classrooms. I think you're really going to enjoy our conversation today, actually. We're talking about children with high needs and some of those annoying behaviors like spitting. In fact, she gives us some great advice for what to do when kids are spitting. Ready? Set? Here we go. Welcome to the podcast today, Dr. Robin.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. We get to talk about something hard but necessary in the world of early education today. We're going to talk about some high needs behavior. And by high needs, we'll talk a little bit about
frozen
needs. But I am excited to talk to Dr. Robin because you have such a heart for these kids that really need a little extra. And I'm hoping we can come up with some practical things to keep these kids in our programs rather than just sending them away and saying, we have nothing for you. So let's start out. Tell us a little bit about what you consider a common high need behaviors. What does that look like? How do they show up in our classrooms? What's normal versus, whoa, this is a lot?
Well, I think that's a great question about what's normal. And I always tell people normal is the parameters we make. If it's normal in one setting, it may not be normal in another. We can have kids standing up on the furniture in their classroom, and that's not normal. But if mom lets them do it at home, then that seems normal. So we set those parameters of what we allow in school versus how they behave at home. It's the basic inside-outside voice. So that normal range we have to understand also comes from within our own tolerabilities. And we can sustain in the classroom and keep everybody functioning. So anything that kind of interferes with that, then that's what we consider on that out fringe of norm is anything that's disrupting that classroom. And we want to make sure that we are trying to be open-minded to the fact that every kid has a different need, what is normal for them and what they need to maintain their own regulation. We have to accommodate for them.
I think it's really important to remember tolerabilities. I am a mom of 3 sons, so I am very tolerant of loud noise and movement. Rough and tumble play doesn't bother me because I'm used to it. But I've taught next door to a teacher who was a mom of much calmer children than my 3 sons and all their friends, and her tolerability for all that movement and rough and tumble play and all of that, she did not have the same level of tolerance that I had. So it might have really bothered her where I'm like, oh, it's totally fine.
I think that's every teaching style. I was a special ed teacher. Yes, tapping would drive me crazy because I know how it is. And so we had tappers that had foam on the end of it, like little pom-poms or something. They were allowed to keep tapping, but that noise wasn't interrupting other kids' ability to think and concentrate.
I think that's such an important thing to remember. Let's talk about the children per se. I think as teachers, we've got to be aware of our own tolerance levels before we talk about kids. Let's just talk about this with teachers a little bit. How do we actually increase our tolerance? Because I think sometimes that's something that we need to consider. Is it just that this is bothering me because my tolerance level is too low? Or is this really a high need behavior that might need some special support? Or is it that me as the adult, I need to grow in my level of tolerance?
That's an excellent question. I think recognizing what drives us a little bit crazy, no matter how minute it is part of our ability to self-regulate. And that's what we're really going to be talking about, kids, is that self-regulation. They're dysregulated, so they act out, or you see these behaviors come out. So the same thing happens within us. There are things that drive us crazy, how little it may be, the light, the noise, the sound, the smell. And we also have to know that we are capable of regulating that. To build that tolerance, sometimes it's just acknowledging that is something we struggle with. So if it's clanking chairs on the floor, we've seen classrooms that put the balls on the bottom of the feet of the chairs. So what can we do to help regulate that noise or sound? But then again, also recognizing this is part of the process that a child may have to regulate themselves. How can we help them manage that and calm down?
Okay, let's talk a little bit about underlying needs that you might see in children. You've made a couple of examples like they need that extra input from like maybe pounding chairs on the floor, which can grate on my nerves because that noise, like you said, with your tapping pencils, right? What are the needs that children are trying to meet by those behaviors?
I think the big thing that we first talk about is kids and they lack that communication or what those words are. There may be a child that's really frustrated and the word comes out, I'm bored, because they really don't know the words for what frustration means.
Yeah.
And so it's helping to acknowledge that I see you're upset. I can see by how red your face is, that you're stomping feet. Acknowledge that they're having some challenges because in those underlying processes, some of it is just the vocabulary to get out what their wants and needs are effectively. But then it starts to come out in emotion and physical display of how they're feeling. But that is all driven from the inside out. Behavior is influenced by a lot of reasons. It's previous experiences, it's the environment around them and how it's impacting them, and all of those will impact the way that they manage these frustrations at any moment in time. And influence comes from experiences, obviously, that they have, how their parents react to spilt milk. Some people are like, oh, it's just spilt milk. Other people might yell. And so the child's going to respond differently. And so we've got to keep in mind what they're bringing into the classroom in the first place. And that's going to impact how they respond to different things. But the big piece we really think about is the sensory systems. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, there are actually 8 sensory systems, not just 5. And so we've got to be a little more informed that there are 8, and all of those 8 senses impact how the child interacts with their world.
I think it's so important to remember that children are always trying to meet those sensory needs. And the fact that there's 8 senses rather than 5, talk a little bit more in detail about what does that mean?
3 that impact them greatly is our vestibular. Think about the V, movement, and vestibular, and that's how they interact with movement. There are children that we find and we talk about gravitational challenges. Like when a mother tips a child backwards to get their hair washed, they'd have this little jolting feeling. And that is that movement that they're unable to, swinging a variety of things may cause them to be uneasy. They may have problems with balance. On the other side of that, the kids that run into the wall and crash and jump and fall out of their chair, they're looking for more movement. They need that input of extra movement. So you can be over or under in any of these sensory systems. Within that is your vestibular. Your vestibular has to do with your ears and your balance. As adults, we see this a lot with vertigo or motion sickness, car sickness. That is also that vestibular portion, sensory of your brain. It comes through your ears and it has a lot to do with your balance. Our kids either seek it or avoid it. Then on the other one is proprioception. People, reasons to remember things. It's where your body is in space and time. So sometimes you have kids that get too close to you or they want everybody to be away from them. That's a lot of that proprioceptive. We've probably heard in preschool about heavy work, getting them up and moving. That is the proprioceptive. Often children at autism, their proprioception, that pressure is difficult for them. And we see that come out in toe walking. They're avoiding that sensory system and they're up on their toes. They don't want their foot flat. They don't want to walk in the grass. We also see proprioceptive. Imagine picking up a glass and you think that the glass is made out of glass and it's really heavy and you're going to pick it up. But then when you go to grab it, it's plastic and you throw the water out of the glass. And that's your proprioceptive system trying to make those adjustments. But we see that a lot in kids. If they get a juice box, they squeeze it and the juice comes out because they don't have hard. They squeeze that juice box. And then our last one that's in the 8 senses is interoception. This is their ability to tell you when they're hungry. Is their tummy growling because they're hungry, or do they need to go to the bathroom? They're having a hard time regulating that. It has a lot to do with your emotions. We think about when we get really emotional, our face turns red, we get really hot, we might shake, and they're unable to really understand everything they do.
I think understanding those extra 3 senses is so important for teachers to put together the pieces of the puzzle for some of these children, because I think it's easy to watch children. One of the examples you use, like falling out of the chair, that can be so disruptive in your classroom when you're trying to teach something or when children are supposed to be sitting down to eat their meals or whatever. It can feel so disruptive. But if you know that child is really lacking some proprioceptive input, you can take care of it, or vestibular input.
Right.
You can meet that need rather than being annoyed by that behavior, because you recognize, oh, wait, this child is not trying to be disruptive. They really are just meeting a need, or their body is not sure how to handle this moment in time. Understanding that helps us be a whole lot more compassionate with some of the behaviors that do feel disruptive to an adult or even to the other kids. If we can provide that extra input or take away some of the stimulation, it takes us being detectives. We have to be willing to pause for a moment and go, okay, I'm annoyed by this behavior. I need to figure myself out. And then go, okay, what did I just see? What might be missing, or what do we need to add to help this child really be successful, rather than just assuming the child's being defiant or disruptive or rebellious.
One of the good examples I have is that if a child is having an asthma attack or an allergic reaction to peanut butter, it manifests and looks the same.
Yeah.
But we need to treat it. You give epinephrine or you give them an inhaler. They're different things. You treat them differently. And so the same thing is coming about with sensory or behavior. And how do you make the differentiation between whether they're just needing attention and it's behavior related, or it's really sensory seeking? It is being a detective and trying to figure it out. And then you've got to look at what is happening beforehand that's really causing this. And that's where that detective skills, you've got to work backwards to deduce what's causing these issues or behaviors. A little bit of a riddle or a puzzle, however you want to look at it. And you've got to take the challenge. You've got to step forward and say, I'm going to take this challenge and figure it out.
I feel like there is somewhat of a challenge for a lot of our church-based weekday programs. I think a lot of I could say I was one of these teachers, right? I started out in our preschool as just a mom. I didn't have a background in child development. I'm working in a part-time Mother's Day Out program. I have 3 children of my own, but I have no brain development knowledge. I do love kids, and I have taught Sunday school or vacation Bible school. And here I am in this classroom with a heart that wants to do what's right for children. But I don't actually know. What practical tips could you give a teacher who is fairly inexperienced, has a heart to learn, but doesn't really know where to start?
I think making sure that we realize who we are and our own sensory system needs, and it will help us understand the kids' sensory needs. We all have it. Some of us chew on a pencil, tap our foot when we're nervous. We all have it. We have learned to self-regulate. And our job is to help that child co-regulate. That means we're going to help them through their challenges and struggles. If they are having a big episode and they're just over the top with their behaviors and kicking the chairs and spitting and really having a hard time, sometimes it's as simple as, how can I help you? Or I'm here to help you, or I'm going to weather the storm with you, and give them those ideas that you're there to support them and they're not in trouble. And then at the end of those bigger episodes, we give them a hug. We love you. We still love you. Even though this has happened, let's pick up the room. What can I do next time? And then also teaching whatever replacement behavior you would prefer during the calm times, not when they're having an episode. They are so over the top. They're not listening to you. They're not looking at you. There's no teaching in that moment that's going to happen, other than to yourself, to teach yourself to calm down.
I think that's a whole other, we could probably spend an hour talking about that it does us no good as a teacher to try to teach new skills in a moment of meltdown. Literally, your executive function is offline.
Yes.
That state. It's like trying to tell you to calm down when there's a fire burning down, like your building. You're not going to calm down. It's impossible in that moment to do that. For a fireman to tell you, you should have done this, you should have done that. When your house is burning down, that's how children feel when they're having these meltdown moments. Their brain is completely offline. Like the executive function of their brain is offline when they are having what looks like a tantrum or a meltdown. They can't reason. So saying things like, calm down, you know how to handle this, it's not that big of a deal, to them, it's a huge deal. Whatever has happened is a huge deal, regardless of whether from your adult perspective, it's a tiny thing or it doesn't really matter. Trying to teach new skills in that moment is a waste of your breath, and it actually slows down the calming when you're trying to teach.
It usually just infuriates them more.
And not just slows down the calming, but escalates the.
Are you being a fire retardant, or are you throwing more gasoline on the fire?
That's a great analogy. Are you a fire blanket that's calming everything down, or are you just a can of gasoline? That would take some self-reflection, right?
In most preschools, parents know the breathing techniques, whether it's the 5 fingers or blow up a balloon. But sometimes in that moment, if you just do that yourself in front of those kids, I'm going to calm myself down, and this is what I do. And you're just modeling that behavior. Sometimes they'll get into the groove and they start to realize it does work. And hopefully they'll start to use it. Maybe not the first couple times. They're having these big feelings and expressive emotions, but hopefully eventually they'll get to that point. So modeling those, it will calm yourself and it will show them what you're wanting them to do.
Yeah, I think by the time our listeners hear this episode, we'll be about halfway through the year. And I think it's good to remember that when we're teaching these calming techniques, we're teaching those in moments where the classroom is calm or where students are calm. But make it a regular part of your routine. We're not just taking deep breaths when we're upset. We're taking deep breaths throughout the day, so that becomes muscle memory for all of us, not just students, but for us as the adults too. We're creating intentional breaks throughout the day to teach those skills, to practice those skills for us. And then in that moment of upset, meltdown, full on what feels like a disaster, our muscle memory will kick in, hopefully. And then as we model that to regulate ourselves, the children, there's also this thing called mirror neurons. I love talking about mirror neurons because I think they're so powerful. For us as a grown-up to then be able to calm ourselves, we actually send the message to children, you're okay, by us being okay. And that helps them to settle. So yeah, I love that. Do you have other practical ideas for us besides breathing techniques?
And I think with the breathing techniques, it's really good to teach those when the kids have been outside running around, or you take them out and let them run, then put their hand on their heart, do the breathing and have them feel what it feels like to calm down. We want to teach that. So when we say, talk about calm hands are by your side, calm body, calm mind. And so when we're breathing, how does that feel? And we feel that the breathing has slowed. We've calmed that down. So it's really teaching what that means. Like telling kids to concentrate, and they're like, what does concentrate mean? And you do the little finger play, 5 fingers on one hand and 1 on the other, and you're just switching back and forth. You say, oh, this is concentration. There's all kinds of finger games you can play, but it teaches what that word means.
I'm interrupting this episode briefly to tell you about another amazing opportunity to get better equipped for the role that you play in early childhood. Today, I want to tell you about our online, on-demand, self-paced professional development and training courses. You can choose from almost 50 different courses, all provided from a faith perspective. Each course includes downloadable resources and note sheets, engaging video content, and a quick quiz to earn a certificate of completion. Get it done at your own pace in moments that work for you, even in your pajamas if you want to. Check out the full offering at earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com/course-catalog, or just click courses on our website. There's even a popular sample course on behavior management available for free, so you can get a feel for the way each course operates. We can't wait to connect with you inside our course library. Now, let's finish up today's episode.
I always talk about, whenever we're talking about behavior, is replacement behaviors. So if a child is hitting somebody else, it's harder to just say stop hitting, but you can hit your fist, even though that looks aggressive. It's better than hitting another child. Yes, we can't push another child, but we can push the wall. Let's go do wall push-ups. And not that we're punishing anybody, but as a way to remind ourselves, the punishment should fit the crime. It's not a crime, but we are trying to replace whatever sensory they are seeking. If we can't give them the words, he's too close to me, and we're going to model it, you're too close to me, step away. But if they need that physical input, they're looking for that, then you've got to find a replacement behavior for that.
I love that. I think that requires us as educators to step back and reflect, to pause for a minute and say, this behavior is not socially acceptable, like hitting your friend. However, there is a need that needs to be met. So what can we do? Replacement behavior. What can we offer? I love that you said that. We can punch our own hand or let them punch Play-Doh or squeeze Play-Doh or something like that.
That was my next thing. Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Sometimes you know it's around, but you don't. Yes, that's the best. Love that.
Give me a tip for spitting. Spitting is the behavior that I hear a lot. It was one of those behaviors that triggers me as an adult. Spitting just grosses me out. And what's a replacement for that?
So usually, often the spitting is, I always say kids, particularly kids on the autism spectrum, if they really want you to go away, they're going to spit at you. They'll try and hitting. They get naked. That's the other really key one that they like to do. You're going to step back. The spitting, the two things, if they're a typically developing child or even some mild challenges, I have them clean it up if they spit. And then I give them a place where they can spit. You can spit in the garbage can, not at me, not in my face, not at your friends. You can spit in the garbage can or in a napkin. And then rather than condemning them for this terrible behavior, where are you allowed to spit? And then redirect it to the garbage can.
Yeah.
And there has been times that you wear a face shield. Do I need to put my face shield on? And they realize that it's not as normal, particularly now.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe months back, but if that's what you're going to do, I'm going to have to wear this.
Right.
We talk about germs.
I was in a classroom years ago with 3 little boys that just loved each other. And one of them would start spitting just as a fun thing to do, not like spitting an actual saliva. It was more of that raspberry spitting or sticking it out and spitting at each other. They would just get going with the 3 of them all together. That was a challenge for that teacher. And often I got called into that classroom to try to intervene with those boys. But I did what you did. I would pick the instigator. Usually you could tell who the starter was that day. And I would just take him to the trash can and be like, oh my goodness, this looks like it's so fun. But spitting at the table's not okay. Remember, we can only spit into the garbage can. So I want you to be first, and you can come spit into this trash can 10 times, and then we're going to let your friend have a turn. 10 times of spitting is a lot of spitting. For most of them, 10 times was a lot. And I would be like, no, you got to keep going 10 times before it's your friend's turn. And it became so much less fun that they didn't want to do it anymore, because now she's not saying I can't spit, but she's definitely making it not fun.
And it's the same thing with kids running in a classroom. Get a hula hoop and you're allowed to run in the hula hoop. You got to be in the hula hoop. I don't care if you twist, turn, whatever, but you got to be in this hula hoop if you're going to run.
Yeah.
Give them a place to do it.
Yeah. And I think that meets both needs, right? The kids that have an actual need to move their body get to move their body in a place that's safe and acceptable. And the kids who are maybe just trying to get a little bit of attention or being silly, it becomes a lot less fun because now it's so constrained for them that it doesn't get the attention that they're looking for. So I think those are great tips for meeting both sets of kids, the kids who are just trying to get attention or being silly, and then the ones who really have a true input need. Love that. Those are fun. What do you do for kids who are like just refuse, basically shut down? I'm not doing what you say.
Usually got to just give them some space. And it depends on what it is and why are they so against it. And so then you got to, again, be that detective and figure out what's going on. Is it that they're trying to have power over, because there are kids that get in that power struggle and that's what they're looking for, is some sort of control over their environment. And with those kids, you really always want to provide choices. Do you want to sit in the red chair or the blue chair? Because the option is to sit, but you get to have a choice. And sometimes just giving them the ability to have a choice and feel like they have some control over it will help the situation. You can avoid that back and forth between them, but we always suggest you never get in a verbal power struggle with them and you walk away. If they refuse, I'll come back in a few minutes and check on you. You can stay right here, but trying to force, it's just creating the power struggle. And lots of times there are kids that feel that need to have control. Maybe they lack control in so many other areas in their lives, but this is something they get to have control over, which is refusing. So you give them their space and you try to find something fun that they want to ask to join.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. All of these, audience listening, you can come up with creative ideas. Like all of us are creative in this sense. If we pause long enough and recognize, first of all, that some of these behaviors are a trigger for us, it makes us feel uncomfortable. It makes my heart race. It makes my body tense up. And then pause for a minute and think, what is the need? how can I replace this behavior? If I know what the need is, I can figure out some creative, fun way to meet the need of the sensory kid, to remove the attention from the other kid, or to help this one who just doesn't want to do anything, to give them an option for what they can do so that they can have some control. But it will require us to self-reflect, to stop and pause, rather than jumping in and thinking we have to solve this problem right now, especially with the kids who just refuse to do something. That's a whole other trigger for me too, is the child who just stomps their feet and says no. Because my standard response to that is, you don't tell an adult no, you obey.
Right.
Okay. Theoretically, yes. Some of these kids really have no control over their day.
Right.
And they need a moment where they have a choice.
And sometimes we also want kids to be able to have that flexibility to say no at times, just for the health and safety of themselves. So you don't want to extinguish that behavior, that they have that right and that ability to do it. Because we all know the other side of the story. If a stranger tries to pick them up, we want them to be defiant, say no. And so it is important to teach them how to manage how we present it, and the questions that we ask can definitely manipulate the position for which they're making their choice and their answer to it.
Let's talk about those kids that have become really aggressive to the point that you might worry about other students' safety.
Throwing is one of the biggest ones we see. I hear it all over. It is, everybody's getting it. Why chairs are so popular now, I don't know, but they are.
Yeah, I think.
I came into a preschool and I did remove all of the chairs because the preschool did lots of worksheets, and I was like, this is not developmentally appropriate. So I removed all the chairs, and the kids stood and they started doing other things. You can remove the chairs. They can stand at tables. It's okay. They can sit on the floor. Also buying chairs that are big, those big squares.
Yeah.
They're hard to lift up and throw, but the skinny legs, they can grab that one leg and toss it really.
Yeah.
And they're very dangerous. So if you have a kid at that point, that's something you should consider, because safety should come first.
Absolutely.
If he's needing to throw, where can he throw? Can you have a beanbag corner? I always look at replacement behaviors. It's the easiest way to make a change. You can throw in this corner. This is what you can throw. You can buy basketballs that are pillows. Throw the basketball over here in the corner. A lot of it could be sensory related. They need that input, whether it be the physical impact or the push. Maybe it's a noise that they like. Having a calming corner. The big piece of it is knowing your kids and watching for the signs. There's always signs. Rarely does it come out of absolute nowhere. You've seen a change in their face. Their body is getting warm. They're maybe shaking. They're whimpering. They're crying. We can see things be explosive, but we can also see them start to back off. And sometimes they're taking it upon themselves to remove themselves from the group. They need that space. And then we come over and we ask them, oh, we're going to get back in here in the group. They really needed the break. Now we're going to see this explosive behavior. And so it's learning to read those signs. And sometimes it's physically writing what those triggers are so that we can be more reticent in finding, looking, searching, being aware that they're going to come and knowing that's going to happen.
Talk a little bit about how we engage parents with some of these behaviors, because I think many of us have this fear of a parent going, I never see that at home. And maybe they don't. Let's also be honest, like a school environment is very different than a home environment.
It's demands, and the parents don't put demands on their kids, whether it be pick up your shoes, cut your own food, whatever those demands may be. If parents are doing everything for them, we're finding this a lot. We've all been there. It's easier to put your kids' shoes on and tie them when they're learning how than it is to wait the 15 minutes to get them on. And so this is carried over in their daily lives that we're having these issues. And so part of it's just educating the parents. Hopefully you're doing some parent education on a regular basis as a whole. And of course, we always use the compliment sandwich. He's doing really great in this area, but we're having struggles here, and then go on to their part. But one thing I always remind staff, a parent, that the kid's doing this. Can you talk to him? Because a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old's not going to come back tomorrow and mom says, don't hit anybody.
Right.
It's not in their recall of frame to change any behavior at all. It's in the classroom. We talk about the expectations. You can read social stories or books that talk about not hitting your neighbors when we do something else. So if you feel like they need to spit, where do you get to spit? You go ahead and preemptively start the early part of the day. So then you talk to the parents. So he's been spitting in class, but I want you to know now he knows he can spit in the garbage can. And this is what has happened. So you can talk about what the solutions are. We don't want to come and hear all the bad things and all things are happening wrong. We want to talk about the solutions.
Yeah.
So he's hitting, but these are our solutions. Please reinforce them at home.
I think parent education is critical. I think so many of our parents either, let me just speak from my own experience. What I've seen from a lot of young parents in recent years is that they are very concerned about meeting the mental and emotional needs of their children, which is wonderful. There's such a need for their children to never feel distress. They won't say no to their children. They set boundaries for their children because it might cause distress. And I think that's something that we in early education get to be a part of educating these parents, and that boundaries are very important. And actually, children feeling a little bit of distress and a little bit of pressure in their lives is really beneficial. That's how we attach to each other, by responding in distress rather than preventing it. They've got to be able to be independent in some way. As parents, when we do everything for children because it takes too long for us, we've got to build our own distress tolerance too. Waiting, I am finding that a lot of young parents themselves don't have the tolerance for that distress. They cannot handle waiting for their child to put their own shoes on. The anxiety in them is too great to watch that struggle happen. The reality is, when we allow children to struggle a little bit and then they master a skill, the easiest example is the zip top baggie at lunch. If we always open that baggie for them, those children never learn the confidence that they can have, that I am self-sufficient. I can do this all on my own because somebody else has always done it for them. But when we allow them to struggle in the moment and support in the struggle, I can come alongside and say, put your thumb here now, pull really hard. But we allow that child to struggle. That moment when they actually get it, when the skill is developed and they are successful, that's a huge confidence booster. But as parents and educators, it's easier for us to just go open that zip top baggie, everybody's getting food, nobody's crying, everybody's happy, we're done.
Right.
It feels easier in the moment, but it's not actually easier.
That's right. Got to try at least 3 times or whatever. I actually heard a nurse speaking the other day about WIC. She's a WIC instructor, I'm not sure you call it, but she's talking about the high number of kids that have the flat head in the back of their head because the parents aren't putting them in tummy time because they can't tolerate the crying.
Exactly.
It starts off so early, but I think we underestimate the fact that most people have not been around young children these days. Now, the way it works out is a parent wants a college student who's gone through the first aid, CPR, safety certification with the Red Cross before you can babysit my child. So there's just this lack of general understanding about children and tolerability and how kids behave and what child development looks like. And so it makes it more of a strain and a stress. So you're right. They're just trying to keep them comfortable all the time. Independence is what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely. But again, like going back to us as educators, it's our job to educate parents because we do know what's good for children, and they may not have that experience that we have. So it is important that we share what we know, what we're experiencing in the classroom, and the solutions, what's working in the classroom. Hopefully that helps also to equip parents to use those same techniques at home, which is also great parenting. If it works in our classroom with the kids, it's beneficial in a home with 1 or 2 kids.
And you got to look at how you're doing the education for the parents. I think teachers every day have an aha moment, right? We learn something every day. We are lifelong learners. So maybe when you have those aha moments about child development or something that works or a new way to tie shoes, you share that.
I love that.
Learning and growing together. If you just learned it and you're in this field, they probably don't know it.
Yeah.
So share what you learn.
Share what you're learning, what you're excited about. That's going to be beneficial to parents. Absolutely. Last question. This has been so awesome, by the way. So helpful. Our podcast is called Reimagine Childhood. I would love for just a second for you to reimagine one thing about society's current approach to early childhood. What would be something you would reimagine?
More free play would be the number one. Climbing, more things to climb. A lot of playgrounds you go to, they have stairs. Climbing is the best way to develop the neural pathways for decision making.
Oh.
Very underlying foundation of decision making is made in climbing. And it's that bilateral movement, crossing the midline, deciding how high you have to reach your hand up. So that would be one of my big things. Challenging playgrounds for kids. But yes, that less structured time. But my biggest is that for all kids, inclusion is the most important thing because it makes every child that looks or seems a little different normal. And that's what we want normal to look like. Different is normal.
It's good to remember that we're not all the same, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
We all have strengths and weaknesses, and some of them come out in different ways, but together we actually build the human race. Like together we show the image of God, how God created us in his image. That's not us individually, but it's us together that we can really display fully the image of God. I love that.
I just want teachers to take that challenge. They have the child that has a special need, whether it's additional sensory issues that they're challenged with, or behavior, or they're overly shy, that we just take those challenges and say, they're a gift from God. And how am I going to touch them and impact them today and help them learn and grow?
I think that attitude shift for us as educators is critical. It's the key.
Don't give up.
Dr. Robin, this has been very enlightening for me and hopefully beneficial for our listening audience as well. Thank you for sharing your expertise today.
If anybody has questions, send them my way. I'd be happy to answer them.
We'll definitely link to your website in the show notes, so y'all be taking a look at that. We'll link contact information for Dr. Robin to her website so that you can easily get in touch.
Thank you.
Dr. Robin is definitely a wealth of ideas and information, and she has such a heart for supporting all children, but especially those who are a little more challenging and those who are sometimes a little harder to love. The main takeaways I had today: number one, pause and reflect on what underlying needs might not be fulfilled when you see behavior that looks disruptive or aggressive. Most of the time, young children are not just trying to annoy you or trying to be disruptive. A lot of times, there is some underlying need. I love that she shared those 3 extra senses with us so we can think about what we might be able to provide for those children. The second thing that stuck with me was getting creative in finding acceptable replacement behaviors for some of these annoying behaviors or behaviors that just send us over the edge. I loved her idea of allowing some of those super active kids to work out that need for movement inside a hula hoop. Allows those kids who really need that movement to safely move their bodies and meet their need. And for the kid who's just wanting extra attention and running around the room to get your attention, that hula hoop is a whole lot less fun. So hopefully that would deter them. What is that behavior that's driving you crazy right now? Pause for just a few moments. Is there a sensory need that's not being met for that child? Is there some other behavior that you could encourage, a replacement behavior, that would meet that need? What's something that you learned in recent days about the children in your care? And have you shared that with their parents yet? I thought that was great advice too, that as we're learning, we should share our knowledge with the parents in our classrooms. If you'd like to get in touch with Dr. Robin, you can go to platypuslearning.com. We've linked it in the show notes for you. You might also want to go back and listen to episode 46 with Claire Turner, where we talk some more about untangling the why beneath some of these challenging behaviors. I hope that we've given you a nudge toward maybe being able to love some of those hard kids. Let us know how we can support you every day. Thanks for listening. As always, we are on your team and we want to provide the resources to help equip and encourage you to do your job to the glory of God. Thanks for spending time with us today on Reimagine Childhood. We hope you walk away with a fresh idea, a little encouragement, and a big reminder that your work with young children truly changes lives. If this episode was helpful, would you take a moment to subscribe? Rate the show in whichever app you listen, and then share this episode with someone who might benefit. Your engagement helps us reach more teachers and caregivers who are shaping the next generation for Jesus. Stay connected with us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, and our website at earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com. Until next time, keep nurturing wonder, faith, and joy in the children God has placed in your care.